All right, so for a goofy intro, Jules wanted to tell his dream from the other day. So go ahead, Jules.
So it started out, Catherine was sitting in the hallway, and she lifted her face up, and she was an alien. She had huge eyes, and she was chasing me, saying, "What's up, chicks?"
Hey everyone, you're watching The Homeschooling Scientist, and you are joining us for our third lesson in biology, botany. Right? We're starting chapter 2 today for our discussion portion of it and everything. Chapter 2 in this book is on seeds. Cool, seed plants, right? Seeds obviously super important as the reproductive part of the plant. It's how we get new plants. It's how we grow plants. It's how we start farms and everything, yeah. So seeds, super good, super important. What are the things that a seed needs to grow? What do you think? I know you guys have been trying to grow some seeds on the deck and all that. What's a seed need to grow?
It needs sunlight and water.
Sunlight and water. It doesn't actually need sunlight. In general. Water.
So water and then like dirt or something for its roots to like put around it. And yeah.
It doesn't actually need dirt either.
Yep, I know that.
Well, then why do you say it needs dirt?
It needs things to stick its roots in and get nutrients from.
Well, it eventually needs, for the plant to grow, it needs dirt or something to pull nutrients from its roots, right? But I'm talking about for the seed to sprout.
The seed to sprout needs water.
Needs water.
You made beans, a bean plant once in cotton.
Yeah. So that's why I'm asking, because I figure you guys would actually know some of this, because we've done experiments over the last few years, and I know you guys are doing some experiments on your own. Yeah.
I remember how I watered my plant was I just took the whole plant out and just grabbed all the cotton balls and just dunked them in the water and then just set them in and set the plant back.
That's one way of doing it.
That's how I watered it. They just poured the water.
Yeah, so they're talking about there's an experiment you could do. You can grow a bean and just put it in cotton balls and wet them, and it will start sprouting and everything.
It's adorable.
Might be a fun one to do at home. But yeah, that experiment sort of goes to show that it doesn't need dirt for the seed to sprout. You can also do this indoors and even in a dark room, so it doesn't actually need sunlight to sprout either. So the other one is water, and the other was actually air, and then there's a third one. Think about what time of year. Like, do seeds start sprouting and growing in the winter?
No.
Why not?
Because they need heat.
Yeah, heat. So, or to be a little more precise, they need the proper temperature, right? So each plant kind of has a ideal temperature that it wants to grow in, and the temperature needs to be about that. If it's middle of winter and it's super cold, your seeds are not going to sprout. Cool. So that's like intro stuff. I'm sort of torn on this chapter because it's kind of a small chapter and a lot of it is just like vocabulary. And I was trying to think about how I want to teach this to you guys. And what I sort of settled on is I think we are going to go through the vocabulary, but I'm not going to really focus on it. So we're going to have a bunch of weird words that we're going to be using in here. I just want you to listen to them and hear them so that maybe, later on the road you'll recognize and be like, oh, I've heard that word before. But we're not going to do this like you need to know the definition for all these and memorize these like 10 different words and whatever. I just think that would be really unnecessary and would distract from the sort of main message of the chapter that I want you guys to get across. Okay. So what is the main message of the chapter then is, again, so seeds are how the plants reproduce. And I think the main idea that I want you guys to take away from this and really know is that the seeds, the different parts of the seeds, and we'll show a diagram later, but the seeds have different parts, and those parts sort of correspond to the parts of a mature plant. Or at least most of them do, I should say. So the biggest part is called the cotyledon, and this is kind of like the food part of the seed. Okay. So remember we kind of talked about last time how plants, when a seed starts growing, it needs energy to grow, right? Anytime you grow, you're using energy. But it doesn't have, as a seed, it doesn't have leaves and roots and everything yet. So where does it get that energy from? Well, it's from the seed itself. So when plants produce seeds, it's got sort of, remember what we said? It's got like the baby plant in there, and then a lot of what is essentially like plant food. So that when that baby plant starts to grow and starts growing roots out of the seed and starts growing a stem and the first leaves start coming out, it's all eating that little part of the food that's in that seed. Okay.
Also, something I just want to say is when I think of a seed after that other lesson, when you told us like about the food inside of it, I think of it as a pantry because it has like all the food and then it has the baby seed. Mm-hmm. Or like the baby plant inside of it. Stealing from the pantry. He's stealing from the pantry. Oh no.
Yeah. And I think it's also worth noting before we get into these different parts, seeds are all very different too. And so like your book and the diagram that we're going to use to point these out is for like a bean seed. But, if you think about all the seeds that you've seen, like acorns, and walnuts, and all these different things, they look different and their parts are going to look a little different, and some of them might have some parts that others don't, and things like that. So just understand, like, there's a lot of variety in seeds, and what we're talking about here is sort of just a general overview of what you can expect a seed to have in it. Okay. But each specific seed might be a little different.
Just like how like strawberries have seeds and how watermelons have seeds, and then like acorns and walnuts. Different sizes and shapes.
Yeah. So one of the parts of the seed, I thought that I'm just gonna point this one out because I thought it was kind of funny, was the hilum was the belly button of the seed. Do you ever realize that seeds have belly buttons?
Nope. Not really.
So it's the part of the seed that was sort of like connected into the main plant, right? So just like when a plant is, as the seed is still attached to the sort of parent plant, it has to have a part that's attached to it that's, getting it the nutrients and everything so it can grow, so it can store food, so it can have the baby plant and all that stuff. And so that's kind of, where it detaches, that's kind of, it leaves like a little part of the thing, and that's like the belly button of the seed, basically.
I've been wondering, like, why beans, like, when I look at a bean, there's like this little, like, very little, like, dent in it, like, in the certain spot of the bean.
That's probably what you're looking at. Yeah, that's probably the belly button.
What is that? What is that for?
So you know why I'm calling it the belly button?
Why?
What's the belly button on humans? Do you know? Like what your belly button's from?
Nope.
That's like when you're in mommy's tummy and you're growing as a baby. It's called the umbilical cord.
I've heard of that.
There's like a cord, and it's basically, it is basically like a thick cord, but it's made of like blood vessels and veins and things like that connects the baby to the mommy, and it connects into you at what is now your belly button. And so they cut it off when you're born and everything, but yeah. So you basically snip it, and then it actually just kind of falls off on its own after the baby's born, which is pretty wild to think about. But yeah. So when the baby's growing, before it's born, as the baby's growing, when it's inside the mommy, before the baby's born, all of the baby's nutrients have to come from the mommy, right? Because the baby can't eat yet and all that stuff. So as it's growing, remember what we said, to grow you need energy. It's getting the energy from the mommy. And the baby's inside the mommy, it can't breathe, right? So how does the baby
not alive yet?
It's alive. All right, so when the baby is growing inside the mommy, you have the umbilical cord that connects the baby to the mommy, and that's where a lot of interesting stuff happens. But basically, it's where the mommy can sort of pass nutrients to the baby. It also does this really cool thing where, inside the mommy, their blood, because the baby and the mommy have their own blood, and they don't ever mix. And it would be actually bad for the blood to mix, because it would they can attack each other and essentially have an allergic reaction to each other. So the blood actually never mixes, but what happens is there's these special veins and stuff that their blood, it's here's the mommy's blood and here's the baby's blood, and they come and they get really, really close to each other without actually mixing. But it's they get so close that oxygen can actually jump from the mommy's blood into the baby's blood. And so that's how the baby gets its oxygen, because, it's inside the mommy, it can't breathe. So pretty cool, right? All right. Has nothing to do with seeds, but we kind of got on the topic, and I thought it was pretty interesting. But anyway, so going back to what we were talking about. So the belly button on the seed is where it was connected on the plant. The belly button on you is where you were connected to your mommy before you were born, right? So cool little fact, right?
Little itty bitty fact.
Sure.
That took a while to explain.
Yeah.
Sized fact.
Well, now you know where your belly button comes from.
I've been wondering that for a million, thousand, 100 years.
Pretty sure you haven't been alive that long, but okay.
It's no over exaggeration.
Mm-hmm.
Been alive for about 10.
All right, so cotyledon, biggest part. It's part of the seed that has the food. I don't know if I want to go into all the details here. Just, again, know that there are monocots and dicots. So we're talking about cotyledon. You guys haven't run into those prefixes probably much. But mono is a prefix that basically means one. Okay? So if you ever see that a word and it has that mono prefix in front of it, it means one. And then di, is a prefix that means two. Okay. So in the context of cotyledons then, what do you think a dicot would be versus a monocot?
Well, 2 cots in 1 cot?
Basically, yeah. So a dicot has 2 cotyledons, and a monocot has 1. It's that simple. There you go. Like I said, there's a lot of... This chapter is very heavy on terminology. Don't get overwhelmed by it. Learn the big important things in this chapter, and don't worry about memorizing all the little words. Again, we're going to say them, we're going to talk about them because I want you guys to hear them. It's part of how our brains work, And how we learn is even just hearing something is good, even if you're not sitting and memorizing it. Because, you hear these words a few times, and then maybe in a few months, maybe even a year, when you go to sit in through a more advanced biology class, or if you really get into studying this on your own, you'll recognize these words and it'll be easier to learn then. Okay. So for now, if you're overwhelmed with all the terminology, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. The other parts of the seed that we talk about here are the radicle, I think is how you pronounce it, radicle. So that becomes the root. There's also the hypercaudal, which becomes the stem. The epicaudal, which becomes like the first leaves. The epicaudal contains the plumule. The plumule. I'm guessing the pronunciation on some of these. But anyway, that's the part that sort of becomes the leaves, the first leaves once the seed opens and the plant starts coming out and so on and so forth, right? That becomes the first leaves. And then that process that we just talked about of how, the seed starts opening up and these parts start unfolding, the roots start growing, the stem starts growing out, the leaves start coming out. That process is called germination. Okay, and this is a word I do want you to know. So of all the crazy words and terms in this chapter, this is, I think, the one that I would like you to learn and know and be able to recognize. So germination.
That's the easiest one to memorize.
Yeah. So germination is the process of a seed. I don't know if hatching isn't really the right word, but the process of the seed growing into a plant. Okay. So you'll hear that word, like the seeds are germinating. Okay. That, if you ever hear that, somebody say, oh, the plants are germinating, the seeds are germinating, that means they're starting to grow into essentially baby plants, right? Does that make sense? The last thing we're going to touch on that the chapter mentions is this idea of consumers versus producers. I think we've had this in other classes. Do you guys remember it? Like, what's a consumer and what's a producer?
One that consumes. Consumers one that consumes.
Consumers consume, yeah.
And producers produce.
Produce what?
Things.
Things, yeah.
Stuff for the consumer to consume.
Yes. But what things? What stuff? Think about life cycle in terms of like the earth. We have, so as animals and like humans would fall in that, right? We eat meat and plants and whatever, and that's how we get energy, right? So we're a consumer. Where does that energy ultimately come from? So we eat other animals, we eat cows for meat and chicken eggs and all this stuff and salads. Some people eat salads. Apples, fruits, yeah. So all the stuff that we eat to get energy, where does that energy come from?
Sun.
Yeah, ultimately the sun, right? But in the kind of intermediate, it's from the plants, right? Because even like the cows and the animals that we eat for meat, they have to eat other things to get their energy too, right? Like cows eat grass, right? Cow can't make its own energy. It has to eat the grass to get energy. Where does the grass get the energy from? from the sun, right?
Where
Or
does
another
the
way
sun
to
get
say
its
that,
energy from?
or another way to say that is the grass. To be a little more specific, the grass makes its own energy, right? And it makes it from the sun, right? The sun is kind of like the ultimate source of energy for life on Earth. And so that's what when we talk about consumers versus producers, a producer is anything that gets energy from the sun and makes food, makes like sugars and, chemicals like that are like our energy chemicals. Most of them are like sugars. And then a consumer is an animal that like can't make its own food, so it has to eat food that a producer made to stay alive, right? So we're consumers. Plants, for the most part, plants are producers and animals are consumers. Okay? So when you eat a seed, a bean or like whatever, what the part of that bean, like why do we eat those things? I mean, yeah, they give us energy, but like what part of it gives us energy? Are we eating it for the baby plant? So what else is in the seed then? Remember, you got the baby plant, and then what's the big part of the seed? What's the biggest part of the seed made out of?
Storage.
Yeah, it's like energy storage. So when you're eating a seed, the part that's giving you your energy it's basically you're stealing the energy that the baby plant was gonna get. Well, you're eating the baby plant in the process too, but
Sad.
yeah, I guess it's a little sad when you phrase it that way, but but that's why God made this stuff is so we would have food, and plants are there for us to eat and there for us to use and grow and all that. There's nothing wrong with that.
And also, I know where the sun got its energy from.
Where?
God.
Okay, yep.
Simple. One word.
Yeah. I mean, technically it's from like nuclear reactions and like nuclear fusion that's going on in the sun. But God made nuclear fusion. So on that strange note, I think we'll call that good for today. But really, we got through chapter 2 pretty much. This is everything that's in chapter 2. Like I said, it's a short chapter. It's really heavy on the terminology. The main things I want you guys to know: no germination, the act of the seed growing, kind of sprouting and growing into a plant. Okay. And know that there's different parts of the seed, and those different parts correspond to parts of the mature plant, and sort of grow. Each part sort of grows into part of the mature plant. Okay. Don't get overwhelmed on all the terminology, though.
Bye.
Cool. All right, that's going to be it for us today. You're watching The Homeschooling Scientist. Peace out.
Peace out. Like, God checks.